How's everybody? Great. All right. We reserve a few minutes Sunday morning to suggest news or trends out in the world that are predicted by our literal future reading of Bible prophecy. There's about 500 or so end times prophecies yet to be fulfilled. There's no reason to think they won't be fulfilled literally just the way all the other 2,000 plus prophecies have been. God's not going to start becoming allegorical in the end times with prophecy. Now, we're careful to use recognized, reliable sources for news. Doesn't mean they're 100% accurate, but it's at least somewhat reliable. That's because there's a lot of sensationalism surrounding unfulfilled Bible prophecy. We don't want to add to that. Don't even search for Bible prophecy unless you know who the person is that you're listening to, because there's some really wacky stuff out there, and it just makes unbelievers think we're crazy. We're not saying the things we report are the definite fulfillment of these prophecies, only that they're things you would expect to be happening out in society. The future Great Tribulation that's going to come upon the whole earth is described in chapters 6 through 19 of the Revelation of Jesus Christ. A major feature of life in that 7-year period is that everyone is going to be identified, and they will conduct their business using their hand or their forehead. Sounds like biometrics. And so we expect advances in biometric technology that would make a system like this possible. But the problem has always been, how will the masses of humanity get on board with what is essentially invasive technology that all but eliminates privacy? Well, enter COVID-19. One article I read this week was titled, "How COVID-19 is Shaping the Biometrics Industry." I'll read a few excerpts. A few weeks on, COVID-19 has significantly altered how we live our daily lives and greatly influenced the course of biometrics. Governments all over the world have ramped up their measures to swiftly respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. To help distribute aid and benefits to its citizens, Jamaica wants to fast-track the creation and implementation of a national ID system. In Poland, people returning to the country from abroad are required to download a biometric smartphone app capable of recording their geolocation and submit selfies for biometric checks to show that they have the device with them. Here's another article. It's a little bit more dystopian. It was titled, "COVID-19 is Changing Our World and Our Attitude to Technology and Privacy." Here's some of that. Before the outbreak, Chinese citizens were subject to far more stringent levels of state surveillance and technology-driven tracking measures than most of us in the West are used to. In the changing world we find ourselves living in now, that intrusion into day-to-day life has greatly intensified. Officials have deployed helmet-mounted cameras able to identify residents with raised body temperatures among crowds of people, and smartphone apps use machine learning to rate citizens using a color-coded scheme that awards them a risk level of red, yellow, or green. Drones armed with heat-seeking cameras, loudspeakers, and even chemical spray jets have been deployed to enforce strict quarantine laws that can see citizens jailed for up to 7 years for non-compliance. And residents have reported being unable to access their homes in lockdown apartment blocks when automated security measures determine that data suggests they possess too high a risk. Advocacy of measures that would often be termed draconian, particularly if they are happening in China or other nations with openly authoritarian rulership, is becoming more frequent in the West. In the UK, the government is using individuals' location data to measure how people are complying with mandates for isolation, self-quarantine, and social isolation. Aggregated data from the phone providers is now being used to monitor public movement around London, and this could be used to understand people's reactions to newly imposed restrictions on public transport. No one really knows what the effects of this will be. There is a danger that these changes and actions will lead to the establishment of a new normal. Once this outbreak is contained and our lives have adapted to the measures needed to keep it so, there is always going to be the danger of another outbreak on the horizon. And so these authors are telling us that we're moving in a direction of invasive biometric technology, and that people are going to acquiesce to it because, after all, it's for their own health and for the good of society at large. And I think we see that that is not an impossibility. There are already people, they're not so much talking about the new normal, but just the fact that life will never be what it was before. I don't really see how anyone reading the Bible wouldn't see that we are rushing headlong towards the Great Tribulation. Just even if biometrics was your only measure, because this is what John the Apostle saw over 2,000 years ago when it would have been considered absolutely insane. We believe the resurrection and rapture of the church is an imminent event. It could happen any moment. Nothing needs to happen before it. It will happen before the tribulation. Jesus is going to come in the clouds and raise the dead believers of the church age. He will transform the bodies of living believers into glorified resurrection bodies. We will all join him in heaven while the earth endures one final 7-year campaign of what could only be called severe evangelism. Are you ready for the rapture? If not, get ready and stay ready and keep looking up, because ready or not, Jesus is coming.